My name is Elaine Foster, and I spent years believing that patience could earn love. If I stayed calm, if I made myself useful, if I kept forgiving, maybe one day they would look at me and finally see someone worth keeping. But it doesn't work that way. Patience doesn't soften cruelty. It only teaches people how far they can push you before you break. Tonight, sitting at that long table, while my own sister laughed about me like I wasn't there, I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was the moment I understood I couldn't keep trying to belong in a place that kept proving I didn't. So I stayed quiet one last time, not to keep the peace, but to mark the end of it. They don't know it yet, but the next time they hear my name, the silence they taught me will be the one thing they can't escape. It was Christmas Eve when I went back. No call ahead, no warning, but I didn't think I needed an invitation. I still believed that family was something you could come home to. The rain hadn't stopped since my flight landed in Atlanta. The storm that had chased me for days still clung to my coat, heavy and cold, like something I couldn't wash off. I caught a cab straight to my mother's house, the same white two-story that had once felt alive with noise and warmth. This time, the windows glowed like they belonged to strangers. Through the glass, I saw laughter, crystal glasses raised, a camera flash, Charlotte Care red dress spinning for her audience. She had the kind of confidence that fills a room. I had the kind that makes one go quiet. I pressed the doorbell. Nothing. After a long pause, I opened the door myself. My mother turned, startled, a glass of wine in her hand. "Elaine, you actually came?" There wasn't a single trace of joy in her voice. No one else turned. 20 guests, and not one of them noticed the mud on my boots or the exhaustion in my face. Charlotte's eyes skimmed over me like I was part of the furniture. I slipped off my jacket, found a corner chair, and sat down. A woman I'd never seen leaned toward me with a polite smile. "Are you one of Charlotte's friends?" I swallowed the truth, forcing a nod. They didn't mean harm, but the ones who should have remembered me, they were the ones who didn't. The dinner table stretched farther than it needed to, a white cloth trimmed in gold running down the center like a runway. I sat at the far end, half in shadow, close enough to hear every word, but far enough to be forgotten. The crystal glasses sparkled under soft light, catching reflections of laughter that didn't belong to me. Charlotte stood up to make a toast. Her voice was bright, rehearsed, full of practiced humility. "It's been such a wonderful year," she said, thanking sponsors, clients, and her husband Ethan, who smiled like he'd memorized his role in her story. Then came the part that landed hardest. She turned to our mother. "And thank you, Mom, for always believing in me, for standing by every choice I made, and for never judging me." Applause followed, warm and approving. My mother's eyes shone, the kind of pride I'd never seen directed my way. I watched her beam, clapping with everyone else, and it struck me. No one even realized I was missing from the speech. Not a single word, not a single glance. The food arrived, colorful but foreign, grain salads, tofu, mousse, and something green that tasted like air. The roast my mother used to make every Christmas was gone. When I asked about it, Charlotte just smiled, slicing her lettuce with perfect grace. "Red meat causes inflammation. Didn't you read that?" I nodded, chewing quietly while a couple at the table began chatting about the storm in Montana. "Did you see that story on the news? A female pilot rescued an entire school before the avalanche hit. They called her the Blizzard Angel." The nickname drew a few laughs, admiration thrown casually around the table. For one second, I froze. Then I looked down at my plate, pretending to smooth my napkin. It was only a heartbeat, but it was long enough for the truth to land heavy inside me. They were talking about me, sitting right there, invisible at my own family's table, while strangers celebrated a version of me they didn't even know existed. The sound of their laughter faded, and memory took its place. I remembered another winter, my first night flight during training. I landed wrong, hard, my leg twisting under me. I could see the bone pressing through the fabric of my suit. I called home again and again, but no one answered. Later, I learned they'd been celebrating Charlotte's birthday that night. No one even noticed I hadn't come home in 6 months. Charlotte had always been the favorite. The soft curls, the recitals, the dresses that made my mother cry with pride. I was the difficult one, the girl who asked too many questions and never smiled right in pictures. Back then, I used to stand in the hallway, tracing my finger along the edges of her trophies, wondering if love had a measurement I hadn't been told about. Tonight, that old ache came rushing back. My eyes drifted to the living room wall where a new family portrait hung in a gilded frame. Everyone was there. My mother, Charlotte, Ethan, even the dog. I wasn't. When a guest asked about me, my mother laughed softly. She's hardly ever home, so we left her out. The words landed quietly, almost kindly. That made them worse. I sat there, feeling my throat tighten, my pulse echoing against the rim of my glass. I didn't need flowers or gifts or a toast. I just wanted to exist in their version of home. But sitting there, half hidden at the edge of the light, I finally understood. I'd already been erased long before tonight. And that hurts more than hatred ever could. Because hatred means you were at least once worth the trouble. By 8, the room had turned golden with light and wine. Charlotte tapped her glass and the chime sliced clean through the music. Every head lifted, every face turned toward her. She smiled, polished, glowing, her favorite kind of stage. Before we open gifts, I just want to say how grateful I am. This year has been amazing. Her words floated like perfume, sweet and empty. Her eyes skimmed across the table, skipping over me as if by instinct. I know some people choose unconventional lives, she added with a practiced laugh. Flying around, chasing things most of us can't see, but hey, they still remember to drop by sometimes. Laughter rippled politely. My grip on the fork tightened until my knuckles ached. Charlotte looked right at me now, that perfect half smile curving like a blade. A uniform doesn't make anyone noble, she said. We all serve life in our own way, don't we? Applause, compliments. Someone whispered what a gifted speaker she was. My mother clapped too, her eyes shining with pride that had never been mine. I sat still, breathing through the noise. Charlotte always needed to win the room, and I, sitting there in my creased uniform, was her prop, proof of who she wasn't. The laughter grew louder, the glasses fuller, and somewhere between the clinking and the jokes, I felt the last thread of patience snap. Then Ethan spoke. His tone was quiet, uncertain, but it cut through everything. Sorry, but that pilot on the news, Blizzard Angel, that was you, wasn't it? The fork slipped from my hand. Charlotte froze, color draining from her face. Ethan, what are you doing? He hesitated. Her name was Foster, he said. She looked a lot like your sister. 20 heads turned. My pulse thudded in my ears. The laughter died, leaving only the hum of the heater and the faint sound of someone's glass trembling. I rose slowly, not to argue, not to prove. I reached into my pocket and placed a small silver insignia on the table, the one with wings carved into frost. Yes, I said, Blizzard Angel is me. My mother gasped. I didn't let her speak. I flew through 3 states in that storm. 14 people survived. 10 were children. They don't know my name, but they remember that call sign. And tonight, I sat here for hours, invisible. So thank you for helping me see clearly. Charlotte laughed, brittle and sharp. How heroic, but who asked you to explain yourself? Ethan's voice was quiet again. No one, but no one should have made her a joke. Her face stiffened. You're taking her side. He didn't answer. From the end of the table, Walter, my father's old friend, stood. His steps were heavy, but sure. He walked over, stopped beside me, and saluted. You saved my grandson last week, his voice said, steady. My family owes you everything. The silence that followed was thick, electric. Charlotte's expression collapsed. My mother's lips parted, with no words to fill the air. I looked around the table at every person who had ever made me feel small. I don't need anyone's debt, I said. I only ever wanted respect. Then I turned away. My boots clicked against the wooden floor, echoing like a clock striking midnight behind me. Charlotte's voice cracked. "Where are you going? Running again?" I glanced over my shoulder. No, not running, leaving. Outside, snow was falling, soft and certain. Through the window, I saw Ethan stand, set his glass down, and follow me with his eyes. For the first time all night, the silence belonged to me. The cold hit me the moment I stepped outside. My breath turned white in the air as I walked down the porch steps. Behind me, the music still played, muffled through the closed door, but the laughter had stopped. For the first time that night, the house sounded like what it truly was, hollow. I thought walking away would feel freeing. Instead, it felt like standing alone in an empty cockpit mid-flight, quiet, suspended, dangerously still. I hadn't reached my car when I heard my name. "Elaine, wait!" My mother stood at the doorway, a shawl thrown over her shoulders, eyes red and shining. I couldn't tell if it was from shame or from the wine. She came closer, shivering. "I didn't know you were coming. I thought you were still out in Montana." Her voice broke on the last word. I stopped, but only because the sound of it reminded me how many times she'd said nothing at all. "Not knowing has always been your gift," I said quietly. "You didn't know when I broke my leg in training. You didn't know when I got promoted. You didn't know when I nearly died in that storm. And now you didn't know I came home." She lowered her head. "I didn't mean to." "Worse than meaning to," I cut in, "is knowing and staying silent." Footsteps clicked against the porch behind her. Charlotte appeared, still wrapped in her red dress, makeup perfect, fury burning through it. "Oh, perfect," she sneered. "You've always loved being the victim, haven't you?" I looked at her, calm now, strangely detached. "No, Charlotte, you're the winner. You always were. You just never realized tonight's applause wasn't for you." Her mouth opened, but no words came. Ethan stood in the doorway behind them, frozen in the dim light, saying nothing, watching everything. My mother reached out, voice trembling. "Thank you for staying silent when you could have shouted," he said. "You don't need them to know your worth." The line clicked dead. I set the phone face down, the screen black, and for the first time in years, I didn't cry. I woke up in a cheap motel outside Athens. The sheets smelled of bleach and loneliness. My phone blinked with new messages, 20, maybe more. "Mom, it was all a misunderstanding, sweetheart." "Charlotte, you humiliated me in front of everyone. You owe me an apology." "Ethan, I don't know what to say, but I think you weren't wrong." I dropped the phone onto the nightstand. The silence afterward felt heavier than the storm outside. By mid-morning, I was driving toward the old airfield on the edge of town, the place where I'd first learned to fly. The hangars were rusted, the paint on the walls peeling. On one wall, almost erased by time, someone had once scrawled a line in red paint: "Fly even when they doubt." I touched the faded words, the paint rough beneath my fingertips. Back then, I thought it was just a slogan. Now, it was the only rule I had left. The wind hissed through the broken windows as I sat on the edge of the runway, staring out at the mist rolling across the field. That was when my phone rang again. "Elaine," Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. "Charlotte's falling apart. Someone recorded last night. She's terrified it'll leak. I thought you should know." I watched the fog move like smoke across the tarmac. "I don't care," I said softly.
I don't want revenge, I just don't want lies to win anymore. After he hung up, I sat there a long while, listening to the hum of the wind, until my phone chimed with a new email. It was from headquarters, a request for me to train a new rescue unit in Alaska. I didn't think, I just hit reply. Yes. By noon, I was driving back through the city one last time. I stopped at my mother's house, the driveway still marked by faint tracks in the snow. She opened the door, eyes swollen. Charlotte asked me to apologize for her, she murmured. I placed them on the table one by one and lit a candle. The flame took its time. Paper curled, ink faded, metal warmed to gold. In the reflection of the window, I saw my own face flicker and steady, alone but whole. As I brushed the ashes aside, a small unopened envelope slid free from the pile. No return address, no handwriting I recognized. I tore it open. Inside was a photograph from that night in Montana, the rescue, the snow, the lights, and a single line scrawled at the bottom. From someone who lived because of you, B. I smiled, closing my hand around it. I didn't need to know who it was. That simple thank you was the only one I ever wanted to keep. 3 years passed like a night flight through calm skies, quiet, steady, gone before you know it. I was still in Alaska. Northline Rescue had grown to 12 members, 3 helicopters, and a hallway lined with photographs of lives we'd pulled back from the edge. Sometimes I stood there at dusk, watching the sun sink into the snow and wondering how far I'd come without ever meaning to. Every so often, a letter arrived from my mother, careful, restrained, written as if she were afraid of the space between us. I never replied, but I didn't burn them either. I kept them in a wooden box, pieces of history I no longer needed to erase. Tonight was Christmas again. I sat by the fire with a mug of cocoa while snow drifted heavy outside. A young girl from our team ran in, cheeks flushed, laughing. "Elaine, we came up with a nickname for you, Blizzard Angel." I smiled. "Call me that if you want, but remember, angels get cold too." Their laughter filled the cabin, warm and bright. I looked out the window where snow was falling, soft and endless. No ringing phones, no guilt, no eyes waiting to judge. Just quiet, the kind I'd chosen, not the kind forced upon me. Silence isn't punishment anymore, I whispered to myself. It's peace. The fire crackled, the wind hummed, and I closed my eyes, thinking of those I'd saved, those I'd let go, and the ones still waiting to be found. Because sometimes, to fly, you have to let go of what was never meant to hold you.